It was our wedding anniversary, and my wife's billionaire ex-boyfriend decided to crash it. He showed up at her bakery and, right in front of me, handed her the keys to a brand new Porsche. "Stella," he said, his eyes burning with a possessive heat, "leave this man who can't give you a future. Come back to me." My friends would have been sweating bullets, telling me to just play it cool and let the guy have his moment. But I just slowly adjusted my gold-rimmed glasses and looked at him the same way I'd look at a fascinating new case study. "Classic narcissistic personality disorder," I murmured to my wife, "with strong undertones of control and histrionic traits. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm a therapist." It sounds more impressive than it is. Stripped down, my job is talking to people who've tied themselves in knots. After spending my days navigating the darker corners of the human psyche, I've learned to cherish the simple sweetness in my own life. And the sweetest part of my life is my wife, Stella Miller. Today, my last appointment canceled, and I glanced at the clock. Just 4:00 p.m. Perfect. I could pick Stella up from work early. My wife is a pastry chef. She owns a small, charming bakery she calls the Evening Star Patisserie, just like her, sweet and warm. I pushed open the door, and the little bell above it chimed. Stella, who was wiping down the counter, looked up instantly. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she asked, dropping her cloth and jogging over, a faint, delicious scent of buttercream trailing behind her. I reached out and gently booped her nose. "No client is more important than seeing Mrs. Carter a little sooner," I said with a smile. "Things wrapped up early, so I came to get you." "You smooth talker," she said, but the corners of her mouth betrayed her, curling into a wide grin she couldn't hide. "Let me help you close up," I said, rolling on my sleeves and naturally taking over her task. "Then we can finally try that new ramen place everyone's talking about." This was our life. Simple, but secure. Just then, the bell chimed again. I glanced up instinctively. A man in a ridiculously expensive, tailored suit walked in. He radiated success, from his meticulously styled hair to the practiced corporate smile plastered on his face. The curve of his lips was so perfect, it looked like it had been measured with a protractor, but his eyes were cold. My professional instincts kicked in immediately. Textbook performative personality. The smile on Stella's face froze. "Julien," she said, her voice tight with surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Ah, Julien Vance." I'd heard the name. Stella's college ex-boyfriend. In her words, a guy whose need for control was suffocating. The man named Julien swept his gaze over me for a fraction of a second before landing it on Stella. The carefully crafted smile gained a hint of what he probably thought was nostalgic warmth. "Stella, it's been a long time. Your shop. It's even more successful than I imagined." His eyes fell on the bakery's signature dessert, the Starlight Mousse. He sighed with theatrical wistfulness. "Starlight Mousse? Remember? I told you back in college your talent was like a star in the night sky, that it would shine one day. Looks like I was right." I almost laughed out loud. Classic narcissistic trait, attributing others' achievements to his own inspiration to bolster his sense of self-worth. I see it all the time. Stella clearly picked up on it, too. Her smile faded into something polite but distant. "Thank you, but that was a long time ago. And the inspiration for this dessert actually came from my husband." With that, she smoothly linked her arm through mine, pulling me forward. "Nice one, honey." I moved with her, sliding my arm around her waist from behind in a gentle but clear gesture of ownership. I extended my free hand to Julien, my face a mask of polite cordiality. Julien. I'm Stella's husband, Daniel Carter." I put just a little extra emphasis on the word husband. A hairline crack appeared in Julien's perfect smile. It was gone in an instant, but I saw it. He shook my hand. His grip was firm, his thumb pressing down with a subtle, competitive pressure. A silent power play. "So, you're married," he said, releasing my hand. His gaze snapped back to Stella. "Time flies. We should catch up sometime, Stella. For old time's sake." "We'll see," Stella said, shutting him down without hesitation. "My husband is waiting to take me home." Julien's expression tightened again, but he quickly recalibrated, plastering the fake smile back on. "Of course. I won't keep you. I just moved back to the States. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities." He left that loaded statement hanging in the air and turned to leave. It wasn't until his exotic sports car had disappeared down the street that Stella finally let out a breath and sagged against me, pouting. "He's a control freak. That's why we broke up," she explained succinctly. "I can't believe he found me here." I rubbed her back soothingly. "It's okay. I'm here." I watched the direction Julien had gone, my own expression hardening. "He's a man living in the past. Try to romanticize it to control the present," I said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "He's not going to make any waves." At the time, I thought it was just a meaningless little hiccup. But I'd forgotten. For someone with an obsessive personality, there are no hiccups, only chapters in a story that is to be continued. Come on, Mrs. Carter, I said, taking her hand. That ramen is calling our names. There's nothing a good bowl of ramen can't fix. And if there is, we'll get to. Stella laughed, the tension finally melting away. On the way home, we chatted as if Julian Vance had never existed. But I knew this wasn't over. As a therapist, I know exactly how these people think. In their world, there's no such thing as the one that got away. There's only the one I haven't gotten back yet. Life quickly fell back into its normal rhythm. Julian's appearance was like a pebble tossed into a pond. Once the ripples faded, it was as if he'd never been there. Stella went back to happily creating her desserts, and I went back to navigating the complexities of my clients' minds. Until a week later, when trouble came knocking. Online. That night, Stella and I were curled up on the couch watching a movie when her phone started buzzing nonstop with social media notifications. Who's blowing up your phone this late? I asked casually. Stella picked it up, swiped a few times, and her face fell. What's wrong? I asked, leaning closer. She handed me the phone. The screen showed an Instagram post from a local food blogger, a rave review of the evening star patisserie. That should have been a good thing, but the comment section had been hijacked. An account with the handle at Vance Architecture had posted a photo. It was an old, faded picture from college of Stella and Julian. In the photo, Stella was beaming, holding a lopsided, clearly amateur cake. Julian's caption read, "Remember this? You didn't believe me when I said your talent would shine. So proud to see the Starlight Mousse getting the love it deserves. You made it, Stella." At Evening Star Patisserie, he didn't just comment, he tagged her business account. The replies underneath his comment exploded. OMG, is this the ex who was always cheering her on? So romantic. Wait, so the inspiration for a famous mousse was this architect guy. I ship this. Is a reunion in the works? So what's the current husband? A placeholder? I frowned, reading the comments. Stella's face was flushed with anger. He's twisting everything. That cake was a total failure. It was my first try, and he insisted on taking a picture to make fun of me. Now, he's making it sound like he was my mentor. Don't get angry. He's not worth it, I said, taking the phone and analyzing the situation calmly. This is a classic public manipulation tactic. His goal is to create an ambiguous backstory to undermine your current relationship. He's positioning himself as the sensitive, supportive hero behind your success, which in turn diminishes my role and drives a wedge between us. It's disgusting, Stella fumed. With people like this, the more you react, the more fuel you give them. The best response is no response, I said, putting her phone aside and pulling her into a hug. The truth is the truth. Don't let him control the narrative. Stella nodded, resting her head on my chest, but I could tell she was still rattled. I thought ignoring him would make him go away, but I had underestimated his persistence. The next day, a massive bouquet of dyed blue roses arrived at the bakery. The card, written in an arrogant, swooping script, read, "For my muse, JV." Stella didn't even look at it. She had an employee toss it directly in the trash. The day after that, a package was delivered to our house, addressed specifically to Stella Miller. I opened it. Inside was an expensive-looking frame, and in it was that same old college photograph. Stella's expression hardened. How does he know where we live? Her voice was laced with fear. For someone determined, finding an address isn't that difficult, I said, snapping the frame in half over my knee and dropping it into the garbage can. I immediately pulled out my phone, opened our home security app, and confirmed the camera over our front door was working properly. "Daniel, I'm getting scared," Stella said, grabbing my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. I squeezed her hand and pulled her into my arms, gently rubbing her back. "Don't be. I've got you." I looked into her eyes and spoke with conviction. "Everything he's doing right now is to test your boundaries. He wants you to be scared and confused. It gives him a sense of power and control." I took a breath and broke it down for her in the simplest terms. "Listen to me. From now on, anything he sends, we photograph it for evidence, then we throw it out. Any calls he makes, any texts he sends, you don't answer. You let me handle everything." "But, no buts," I interrupted gently. "You can't play by normal rules with an obsessive personality. The more you try to reason with him, the more he believes you care. The cold shoulder is the most powerful weapon we have." I picked up my phone and, right in front of her, blocked Julian's number, his WhatsApp, and every social media profile I could find. When I was done, I handed my phone to her. "Your turn. Block him on everything. Make him feel like he's punching smoke." Seeing my decisiveness seemed to calm her down. She nodded, took out her phone, and methodically deleted Julian Vance from her digital world. "Okay, No more thinking about him, I said, cupping her face and giving her a soft kiss. Let's think about dinner. I'll make you my famous braised short ribs. Stella finally smiled, a real one, and hugged me tightly. Okay. I held her close, but my mind was already racing. This wasn't over. Blocking him was just the first step. For a guy like Julian, this wouldn't be a deterrent. It would be a challenge. It would ignite his desire to conquer. A real fight was coming. As I stood in the kitchen, prepping the ribs, I started mapping out a strategy. I had to find a way to make him give up completely and utterly. And I had to make him walk into a trap of his own making. To beat a fanatic, you have to be calmer, more rational, and, in a way, even more relentless. For the next week or so, the world was quiet. It was like Julian Vance had vanished from our lives. No calls, no texts, no bizarre deliveries. Stella's nerves finally settled, and her easy smile returned. Looks like your method actually worked, she said one evening, snuggled up against me while munching on a slice of apple I'd cut for her. He's finally given up. I smiled but didn't say anything. I didn't believe for a second that Julian would give up that easily. It didn't fit his psychological profile. The silence before a storm is often the most deceptive. He was waiting for an opportunity, a moment that would allow him to seize control of the narrative again. And then the opportunity came. One afternoon, Stella got a call from one of the most prestigious commercial real estate groups in Chicago. They were formally inviting the Evening Star Patisserie to be the exclusive dessert vendor for the grand opening gala of their newest landmark skyscraper, the Zenith. The Zenith. Even I knew about that project. It was the biggest architectural news in the city that year. And its lead designer was the so-called visionary genius, Julian Vance. When Stella hung up, her face was flushed with excitement. She grabbed my arm, practically bouncing. Daniel, did you hear that? The Zenith. They reached out to me. If I pull this off, it could take my business to a whole new level. I watched her, my internal alarm bells screaming. The timing was too perfect. Who contacted you? I asked. A Mr. Evans from their project management team. He sounded super professional. Stella was still floating on a cloud of euphoria. I took her phone, found the number in her call history, and did a quick search online. It was indeed the public line for the real estate group. On the surface, it looked completely legitimate, but I knew Julian's shadow was all over this. Stella, honey, I need you to calm down and listen to me, I said, guiding her to the couch and turning her to face me. Who is the lead architect on that project? Stella paused, the excitement on her face slowly draining away. Julian. Exactly, I said, getting straight to the point. This isn't just a business opportunity. This is a trap custom-made for you. A trap? She asked, confused. But a huge deal for my bakery. The company contacted me. The contract terms look standard. I don't see the problem. The problem is that it's too perfect, too tempting, I explained, laying it all out for her. Think about it. Why did all his previous attempts to harass you fail? Because he was operating in his own world, sending things into yours. All you had to do was ignore him, and he was powerless. But this is different. I held up a finger. He's pulling you onto his home turf. The Zenith is his creation, his kingdom. The second you agree to this partnership, you have to enter his environment. And in that environment, as the lead architect, he has 1,000 legitimate reasons to interact with you, to supervise your work, even to make demands of you. He's forcing you to play a game by his rules, I concluded. His goal isn't a successful collaboration. It's to reestablish control over you in a world he completely dominates. The color drained from Stella's face. She was smart. She understood immediately. So, I should turn it down, she asked, a note of disappointment in her voice. It was, after all, a massive opportunity for her career. I saw the conflict in her eyes, and an idea began to form. Turn it down? Why would we do that? When an opportunity like this is handed to you, it would be a shame not to use it. Julian wanted to set a trap. Fine. I would help him spring it. On himself. No, we're not turning it down, I said, taking her hand, a small smile playing on my lips. We're going to accept this offer. What? Stella stared at me, bewildered. He wants to play a game? We'll play, I said, my gaze firm, but we'll play by our rules. All you have to do is what you do best. Focus on making incredible desserts. Leave the rest to me. What are you planning? She asked, still worried. He wants to pull you onto his stage, right? I said, my plans solidifying. Well, I'm going to hijack the production. I'll control the lighting, the sound, even the audience. By the end of the night, he won't be the one deciding who's the star of the show. I had her draft a response, handling all communications via email to create a paper trail. In one of the emails, I had her casually mention that her husband would be accompanying her to the gala as her assistant to help manage the event. Stella did as I asked. They replied almost immediately, saying it was no problem at all and that they admired my support for my wife's career. I read their perfectly polite email and smirked. Julian, you think you've written the perfect play? Fantastic. I'll be the uninvited director, and I'm about to give you an ending you'll never forget. Over the next few days, Stella threw herself into designing the dessert menu, while I made my own arrangements. I called a former client of mine, a man whose gratitude I'd earned and who now owned a high-end corporate security firm. Then I called a tech-savvy friend and asked him to get me some party favors. Everything was set. On the night of the gala, I put on a sharp tuxedo, looking every bit the part as I walked into the glittering, palatial lobby of the Zenith, my arm linked with Stella's, in my official capacity as husband and assistant. The moment we entered, I saw him, Julian Vance, holding court in the center of the room like a king, soaking in the praise. When he saw Stella and me walk in together, his eyes cut through the crowd and locked onto mine. They were filled with challenge and the certainty of victory. I offered him a mild, harmless smile. The show's about to start, my friend. I hope you can handle the finale. The gala was in full swing, a sea of designer gowns and tuxedos. Stella's dessert table was a work of art, drawing admiring glances from everyone. Dressed in an elegant white cocktail dress, she was the picture of confidence, gracefully explaining each of her creations to the guests. I played the part of the dutiful assistant, handing her plates, restocking supplies, and never leaving her side. As the man of the hour, Julian was surrounded by admirers, but his eyes were like a hawk's, constantly darting in our direction. He watched Stella shine in the middle of his masterpiece, a smug look on his face that said, "See this treasure? I discovered her." He seemed to revel in it, as if her success was another bullet point on his already glittering resume. Halfway through the evening, he finally made his move, weaving through the crowd with 2 glasses of champagne. "Stella, wonderful job," he said, offering a glass to her and then one to me, his posture as regal as a prince's. "Your desserts have truly elevated the Zenith tonight." The implication was clear. She was a pretty decoration he had brought in. Stella gave him a polite smile, but didn't take the glass. "Thank you, Julian, but I can't drink while I'm working." I accepted my glass and took hers as well, setting them both on a nearby table. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Vance," I said, meeting his gaze with a pleasant smile. "We're just glad Stella had a platform like this to showcase her talent. After all, a great work of art deserves a great gallery. And Stella herself is the masterpiece." I deliberately shifted the focus from his building to my wife. Julian's eyes narrowed slightly. He understood my meaning perfectly. Ignoring me, he turned back to Stella. "Stella, come with me for a moment. I designed a private observation deck on the top floor. It has the best view in the entire city. I've saved the prime spot just for you, as a small thank you for your incredible work tonight." "Here we go," I thought with an internal smirk. The main event was about to begin. Stella instinctively glanced at me, a question in her eyes. I gave her a subtle, reassuring nod. The script was proceeding exactly as I'd written it. "I'd love to," Stella replied, her voice smooth as silk. A triumphant smile flashed across Julian's face. He made a grand, "after you" gesture and led us toward a private elevator. As we ascended in the quiet, confined space, the atmosphere grew tense. Julian stood near Stella, launching into a long-winded explanation of his design philosophy, his words dripping with self-aggrandizement. It was as if he was telling her, "Look at the world I can give you." I remained silent behind Stella, a shadow he'd already dismissed. Ding! The elevator doors slid open. But we weren't on an observation deck. We were in a lavishly decorated penthouse suite. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered like a carpet of diamonds. "The deck is just outside the suite," Julian explained, striding in. "Come on in." Stella looked at me. I squeezed her hand, a silent signal to stay calm, and we stepped inside together. The moment our feet crossed the threshold, the heavy door clicked shut behind us. Julian had locked it. Stella's body went rigid. Julian turned, the mask of charming sophistication finally gone. He stared at Stella, his eyes wild with a disturbing mix of obsessive fervor and long-suppressed possessiveness. "Stella, why did you marry him?" he demanded, completely ignoring my presence. His voice was a raw, desperate rasp. "What can he give you? A therapist? What does he know about art, about beauty? Is he even worthy of you?" "Julian, you need to calm down," Stella said, her brow furrowed. She took a step back, moving to my side. "My marriage is my choice. It has nothing to do with you." "How can it have nothing to do with me?" His voice cracked with emotion. He stalked forward, pointing a trembling finger at the city lights. "Look, I can give you this. The pinnacle of this city, Fame, status, wealth? I can give you anything. Why didn't you wait for me? Why did you have to settle for someone so average? I watched his meltdown with the detached calm of a clinician. A classic narcissistic injury followed by rage. In his world, Stella choosing me was a profound invalidation of his own worth, and he couldn't process it. Average. I finally spoke, my voice quiet but cutting through his tirade. Mr. Vance, maybe in your world, the only things that aren't average are built with money and status. But in my world, giving Stella the security and happiness to be herself, to do what she loves without fear. That's what matters most. My words were like ice water on his fury. He whirled on me, his eyes blazing with a murderous rage. You have no right to speak here. Get out. I don't think so, I replied evenly. I'm Stella's husband. Where she is, I am. Husband. Julian laughed, a frantic, unhinged sound. You think that means anything? Stella, you tell him. Without my inspiration back in the day, would you be here now? Your starlight mousse? Your bakery? It's all because of me. You are my greatest creation. How can you belong to someone else? His control finally snapped. He lunged toward Stella, reaching to grab her arm. Come back to me, Stella. Leave this man who can give you nothing. I can give you the world. Stella cried out, instinctively shrinking behind me. I stepped forward, blocking his path and catching his wrist in a firm grip. He struggled, veins popping on his arm, but my hand was like a steel vise. He wasn't going anywhere. Mr. Vance, I said, looking into his face, now twisted with rage. The game is over. At that moment, just as we had planned, Stella delivered the trigger phrase, her voice steady and clear. She peeked out from behind me, her eyes no longer holding fear, only a cold, profound disappointment. You know what I've learned, Julian? Peace of mind is the most important ingredient. She paused, her gaze unwavering. And that's something Daniel gives me. My name, the signal. The moment Stella said my name, the heavy penthouse door, which Julian had so dramatically locked, emitted a sharp beep. It wasn't the sound of a key. It was an electronic key card. Click. The lock disengaged. The wild, manic expression on Julian's face froze. He stared at the door in utter disbelief. Standing in a now-open doorway was my friend, the one who owned the security firm, flanked by two of his biggest, most imposing guards in full uniform. My friend gave me a subtle nod that said, all taken care of. I released my grip on Julian's wrist and took a step back, leaving him completely exposed. The dynamic in the room shifted instantly from a tense, private confrontation to a very public reckoning. Julian's brain seemed to short-circuit. He looked from the guards at the door to my calm expression, and finally to Stella, his eyes wide with confusion and the sting of betrayal. You, he stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. He was probably racking his brain, trying to figure out how we had opened the door to his exclusive, top-secret suite. It was simple, really. When he'd first extended the invitation, I had introduced my friend to the project manager as the head of Gala Security. Citing the need for a full safety sweep, my friend had easily obtained master key access to every important room in the building, including this one. Julian thought he was the king in his castle, never realizing that I had already handed the keys to my own men. Julian, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't angry. I spoke to him with the same cool, almost clinical professionalism I used with my clients. It was time for his diagnosis. Do you know what your biggest problem is? I asked, taking a step toward him and looking directly into his now panicked eyes. You're not in love with Stella. You're in love with the idea of her, a fantasy version that exists only in your head, one who worships you and validates your genius. You can't stand the fact that she has her own life and her own success, because her independence is a constant reminder that she doesn't need you. Every word was a scalpel, precisely cutting through his polished exterior to expose the pathetic, festering insecurity beneath. Julian's face went pale. He began to tremble. I continued, relentless, sending flowers, posting old photos, orchestrating this entire evening. None of it was about love. It's about a pathological need for control and possession. You tried to erase her present to validate your past. You treated her like an object, a trophy to prove your own good taste. I looked at him, my voice softening with a touch of pity, the way a doctor might look at a patient in terminal denial. Your promise to give her the world really means you will live in the gilded cage I build for you. But here's the thing, Julian. Stella is a star, and stars don't belong in cages. You're lying. He finally managed to choke out, but his voice was weak, stripped of all its earlier arrogance. For a man like him, Being psychoanalyzed and completely dismantled by the average man he despised was a blow far more devastating than any physical fight. Violence hurts the body. This was about destroying his entire sense of self. I finished. A truly confident man celebrates his partner's success. He doesn't try to claim her light as a reflection of his own dim spark. You don't love too much, Mr. Vance. You're just unwell. I gave a signal to the guards at the door. They moved in swiftly, taking hold of a stunned and spiritually broken Julian, who offered no resistance. Mr. Carter, what are your instructions? My friend asked. I pulled out my phone and hit a speed dial number I'd set up earlier. The call connected almost instantly. 911. Yes, I'd like to report crime. The address is the penthouse suite at the Zenith Tower. We have an individual here for attempted false imprisonment and ongoing harassment. We have witnesses and evidence. I glanced at the tiny, discreet camera I'd had my friend plant in the corner of the room. The party favor. It had recorded everything. At the word 9/11, Julian's entire body jolted. He finally snapped back to reality, his eyes wide, not with rage, but with pure, unadulterated fear. It had probably never even occurred to him that I wouldn't play his psychological game, that I would just flip the whole table and drag him into the legal system. I didn't look at him again. I walked over to Stella, slipped my suit jacket over her shoulders, and pulled her into a tight embrace. It's over, I whispered in her ear. Stella nodded hard against my chest. She was still trembling slightly, but her eyes, when she looked up at me, were shining with an astonishing brightness. They were filled with trust and something that looked a lot like awe. I knew, in that moment, that the name Julian Vance would forever be relegated to a bad memory, and that for Stella and me, a quiet, peaceful future was just beginning. The police arrived quickly, faced with uniformed officers, and, shortly thereafter, our lawyer presenting a mountain of evidence. Screenshots of the harassing messages, photos of the unwanted gifts, footage from our front door camera, and the crown jewel, the complete video from the penthouse suite detailing the false imprisonment and verbal threats. Julian Vance crumbled. When they led him away, his face was ashen, his eyes vacant. The arrogant, visionary architect was gone, replaced by a hollow shell. The self-centered world he had so carefully constructed had been shattered by professional analysis and the unyielding force of the law. I left the rest to the lawyers. The combination of attempted false imprisonment and a documented pattern of harassment was more than enough to ensure Julian would be occupied for a very long time. More importantly, the incident created a firestorm in his professional circles. His carefully cultivated image as a passionate, misunderstood artist collapsed overnight, replaced by the far more accurate label of dangerous, obsessive stalker. His career and his reputation were both in ruins, a fate worse than death for a narcissist like him. As for us, after giving our statements, Stella and I slipped out the back entrance of the Zenith. On the drive home, Stella held my arm tightly, her head resting on my shoulder, not saying a word. I knew she needed time to process everything. Back at our apartment, I poured her a glass of warm water and sat her down on the couch. Are you okay? I asked, crouching in front of her and taking her hands in mine. Stella shook her head, then nodded. She looked at me, her eyes sparkling like they held their own constellations. I wasn't scared of him losing control, she said softly. I was scared by you. Me? I was confused. My husband, she said, a slow smile spreading across her face as she reached up to pinch my cheek. You were so damn cool. The way you just stood there, breaking him down piece by piece. It was like you were glowing. Her unexpected praise made me laugh, releasing the last bit of tension I was holding. So Mrs. Carter was impressed by her husband's professional skills. Was she? I asked, pulling her into my arms. Yes, she said, her voice muffled against my chest as she nodded vigorously. I always knew you were a great listener, but I never realized how powerful you are. You can see right through people, and you set that whole thing up so perfectly. It makes me feel incredibly safe. I held her, my heart swelling. Everything I had learned, all the darkness I had waded through in my profession, it was all worth it if it meant I could better protect the person in my arms. Her feeling safe was my greatest achievement. You silly girl, I murmured, kissing the top of her head. All my skills, all my calm, it's all for you. To everyone else, I'm a therapist. But to you, I'm just your husband. The whole ordeal was like a bad flu. The sickness was awful, but after it passed, our immune system was stronger than ever. A few days later, the Evening Star Patisserie announced a new dessert. It was a small, elegant cake with a white cream cheese frosting, dotted with tiny, crystalline sugar stars. In the center was a single heart made of warm, yellow passion fruit curd. It wasn't flashy, but it radiated a sense of comforting warmth. Stella named it the Sanctuary. On the bakery's Instagram, she personally wrote the caption, "Introducing the Sanctuary. Inspired by my husband, who taught me that the sweetest thing in the world isn't a fleeting taste on the tongue, but the profound peace that comes from within and the happiness of being chosen steadfastly and completely by the one you love. This one is my love letter to him." The comment section, once a toxic battlefield, was now filled with messages of support and people gushing over our story. I was in my office when I saw the post. I couldn't help but smile. After work, I made a detour to Stella's bakery. It was packed. The Sanctuary was the new hit. Nearly everyone was buying one. I watched Stella behind the counter, a blur of happy energy, a genuine, radiant smile on her face. That smile was sweeter than anything she could ever bake. When the last customer left, I finally walked up to the counter. "Mr. Carter, care for a Sanctuary?" "They're the last of the batch today," she said, winking at me playfully. "Absolutely," I replied with a grin. "But I'll take the one with the exclusive custom order." She turned and pulled a specially reserved cake from the display case, the one she'd saved for me, and set it on the counter. I took a bite. The cream was rich, the passion fruit was bright and sweet, and the cake was perfectly tender. It was a flawless balance, comforting and delicious. "Well?" she asked, her eyes full of anticipation. I put down my fork and looked at her seriously, delivering my official review. "The sweetness level is perfect. It's my favorite recipe." Stella's smile widened, and it felt like all the stars she was named for had gathered in her eyes. I pulled her into my arms, and there, in the soft light of the setting sun, I gave her a long, deep kiss. I knew life would always have its unexpected intrusions, but as long as we faced them together, any storm would just be another unique ingredient in the custom recipe of our life. And I, Daniel Carter, would always be my wife Stella Miller's dedicated therapist and her loving husband. And that was more than enough.